Hey everyone, welcome to Zannen Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. So this is a podcast focusing on the connections between anime and Canadian media. And we are going a little off that main topic today, but I think it's okay because we're going to talk about something that I think a lot of listeners on this show will be interested in. Back when I started the podcast in around 2015, late 2015, I said that I was going to have the key creatives behind the Adult Swim Canada series Night Sweats on the show. And I'm happy to confirm that I am no longer a liar because they are both here today. And hey, they've got a new show coming to Adult Swim Canada very soon on June 4th, 2023. Chances are it may already have aired by the time you listen to this, but you'll also be able to check it out on the various streaming platforms Chorus has, like the global app and StackTV. So I'm very happy to have them here today. The new show is Psi Cops from Wind Sun Sky Productions. And joining me today is Chris Nielsen and Bart Bachelor. Guys, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely. Long time coming.
Absolutely, but it's glad to have you here. So Psi Cops, I've watched the first couple episodes. The show is fantastic. It's funny. It's dense. You can watch this multiple times, and I think you get more out of it every time you watch it. And I have already been telling people about it for quite a while. And every time I bring this up with people, they always ask me if this is related to Babylon 5. Is this something that you've been hearing as well? As
I have no connection. Explain the connection.
Absolutely zero.
Okay. In Babylon 5, there's an organization called the Psi Corps. And you see Psi Cops, it kind of looks like that. And I don't know. I think you guys should just lean into it. But
yeah, we'll let the lawyer consult us on that one. See how far we can lean in any direction.
Well, hey, looking at your stuff in Night Sweats, looking at Psi Cops, and I mean, we'll talk about each individual show as you know, we'll get to it in a moment. But you're very much leaning into the experiences of people who watch television in the 1990s. That's really what you guys are digging into with your approach, with the stuff you did in Night Sweats and what you're doing with Psi Cops. Because with Psi Cops, you got some X-Files, you got some totally real alien autopsy stuff, the atmosphere and the aesthetic, the color palette. It all feels like a very 90s kind of thing. And I felt that a lot of that with your stuff on Night Sweats as well.
Yeah, that's nice that we're able to pick up on that. We're definitely kind of, especially for Psi Cops, our aesthetic we're after is late 90s, early 2000s, X-Files, absolutely. And kind of like our bigger goal is to kind of marry modern storytelling methods, and as you said, like dense and quick, with that kind of older aesthetic, which is kind of like, you know, when you go watch an episode of X-Files now, it's like that stuff was slow. We want to kind of make it fast and snappy and catching up to our kind of ADHD generation.
And it is so dense. Like each episode is 11 minutes, which I think is great because that's the length of most American Adult Swim shows. So, you know, it kind of fits in with that flow of Adult Swim, even though a lot of people will watch it streaming, of course. But yeah, they finally, you know, Chorus always was doing stuff that was in the 30-minute realm, but now they're down into the like 11-minute or 15-minute realm. So it fits in that flow, and it also feels like you've written what would often be used as a 22-minute script and cut out every bit of fat possible and crunched it down to 11 minutes, and it only benefits from that. Everything is just rapid fire, nothing misses, or it's very rare that it misses. I found.
It's very funny you bring that up. It's for one, like our page count is astronomical compared to another 11-minute show. And Bart and I were talking about this earlier today. It's oddly a bit of a sport of ours to get things as dense and as quick and as fast as possible. And we're always trying to one up each other, and the whole team trying to kind of like push them to go further and further every time. It's kind of become a calling card of ours.
Yeah, the sport of how much can you cut out. And to Chris's point, you know, in animation and film, you always hear a page per minute for a script. Mm-hmm. So a 90-minute script feature probably was a 90-page script, and ours is more than double. Like our scripts were 26 pages for 11 minutes. Animation runs a bit quicker. It's usually like 13 to 15 for 11 minutes. But yeah, we're up there at 26 pages. And it's kind of, when you get into the sport of it, as Chris said, it's pretty interesting how, and I give it the audience credit, to a lot of credit towards this, the modern audience is like, you don't need as nearly as much as you think to tell a story. Like people can fill in blanks, pick up the smallest cues. It's kind of fascinating how much you can cut out. We over record and overwrite. And then it's pretty shocking how many beats, how many moments, how many pieces of dialogue and expository you can rip out of a piece and it still be super cohesive. So when you say cut down the fat, absolutely.
Yeah, in episode 2, there was one. I won't spoil it, but there's a joke about tomato juice. It's some good misdirection because it feels like it's going to be a bad joke that's going to get dragged out. Like you'd expect in a lot of shows, it just gets dragged out and used as filler. But it very quickly turns out to be something that's really dark and ties into the rest of the episode in a, well, I won't say unexpected way, but in a way that you won't initially expect, and then it just, you know, ties into the main storyline. I thought that was really great because it took me off guard. On Adult Swim so far, a lot of the adult content that Chorus has put out, it's from the French market, and this is the first one that they've done that's actually produced for the English speaking market. And I can't really criticize the French shows too much because they're made in a completely different cultural context, and I find like stuff like, you know, Red Ketchup is made for that audience, but they're still dubbing it in English because they need the content. And I find usually these 30-minute adult targeted shows they make are a little more dragged out, but this is it is short, dense, and you know how to play with that exactly.
That's really funny. And that kind of brings up 2 points. Like one, I agree. And I think French stuff, obviously the French language is denser and it like,
yeah,
I'm imagining like to go like to translate from French to English, like you end up with like just a lot of space that you have to kind of fill in with English because we can get through it quicker in a strange way. Or maybe I'm thinking about that the opposite direction, but that kind of makes me think we have the French translation of Psi Cops coming up. That
I was going to ask, is there a French version? Of course there's a French version.
There will be, and we haven't heard any of it. And like, we are really stoked to see how they cram the translation into that. It's going to be very funny.
Is it just being dubbed in French, or are they doing other languages as well?
So far, just French. Our goal is to make some international sales down the road and be dubbed into a bunch of languages. But yeah, it's just French now. And I think, Chris, to your point, it's just generally there's more words in a French sentence to complete that sentence. So it'll be curious how they're able to pack it in.
Just to take a step back, can you guys just explain Psi Cops in a nutshell, just to give the context for what we're talking about with the show?
Absolutely, yeah. It's in its simplest form, it's basically animated X-Files, and you're replacing Mulder and Scully with two morons. It's a paranormal detective show starring the lead detectives, Kid and Felix, who are very out-of-the-box thinkers when they're out there kind of researching ghosts and vampires and aliens and stuff. And it's a half office comedy because if they're not out in the field doing research, they're back in an office with an ensemble of kind of like fun characters, a hacker and a brute and a project manager and stuff. So yeah, paranormal investigation comedy.
With Night Sweats, you made a number of the shorts on that show, but this one in particular, it's building off of World Doctors. It feels like an extension of that whole approach to comedy, especially since maybe I missed nuances, but the main characters seem to be effectively the same characters that we had in World Doctors.
You are not wrong. It's kind of recent, you know, when you're working as long as Chris and I have, in the last 4 or 5 years, the truth is when you're in comedy, you kind of have a shtick, and our shtick is two creative geniuses, I'm doing quotes, morons, with jobs, and it's repeated throughout all their work. There's doctors, there's con artists, there's paranormal investigators. They keep graduating. We do try to every step, like between World Doctors and Daddy and the Big Boy, another show of ours, and then to Psi Cops, we try to add more layers to those characters. Like James and James of World Doctors were like really one note. We do feel like Kid and Felix and Psi Cops are spiritually the same, but they have a lot more layers to them that throughout the series you get to kind of that unravel a bit.
And you play each of those characters.
Yes,
Yeah.
as part of our shtick, Chris and I both do one each.
And do you feel that the characters are an extension of yourselves in a way, or is there just a specific role you like to take on when doing that?
No, I'd say there's a split focus between them, and I think each of them kind of occupies just one half of our psyche, I'd say. But the way the characters kind of split up, action versus I don't want to say thinker, but like a planner versus an actor. It's kind of funny because I think my James in World Doctors was probably closer to Felix, who Bart plays on Psi Cops. So we kind of we can easily fit into both of the characters. Now that said, Psi Cops, we've recorded 24 episodes, and I couldn't see myself slipping into Felix at this point.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go back even further and actually look at where this kind of started with Night Sweats. So can you guys just kind of summarize the story behind what Night Sweats is and how that came to be back, 7 or 8 years ago? I know it involved a number of companies that no longer exist.
Yeah, we've outlived them all. No, I mean, they've all just transformed, I think. It probably goes back to Bart and I making a series called Archaeologists, just in our spare time while we were working in advertising. Mm-hmm. So we get together and we'd be idiots on a microphone and just kind of goof around for hours. And I remember Bart sent me some animated stuff that he did of the first episode of Archaeologist. And it was, I think, Bart, was it the fingers jamming when we were typing on the computer?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just like, okay, this is just fucking nuts. This is amazing. And we just kind of built off of that and started playing with that. And the fun thing with that one, it was animated in Poser. So all the characters were like stock models, and it was all really accessible, and we could just jump in, just the two of us, animate the whole thing. And that kind of got quickly picked up, right, Bart?
Yeah, a couple of we tried a bunch of little YouTube experiments in the animation space trying to get traction, and something about Archaeologist, this bad janky 3D. We're talking 2008 or 9 right now. It just resonated, as you can imagine it would in that time, and it made it around enough that at the time Nick Dembour, who's a great Canadian animator, who was working for Conan O'Brien doing Conan O'Brien skits, animated skits, found it, sent it to Josh Bowen at Blue Ant Media, who then asked us to make a series based off of it, World Doctors, for Mondo, which I'm sure you know Mondo on YouTube. They have tons of comedy animation. And so Josh Bowen, who we were just emailing with earlier today, trying to get him out here for our launch party. He did some amazing work. He produced, and I'm sure you're aware of all this, Jesse, he produced a whole bunch of great Canadian comedy cartoons, and then wanted to pack it all up. So that was like 2015. World Doctors had all of its 26 episodes out, and there was tons of awesome shows, Crack Duck and Don't Feed the Humans. And we packaged it for Adult Swim. He wanted to have a late night compilation of all these rad shows they'd made, and they needed glue in between those segments, kind of YTV classic style, and they asked us to do it. Chris and I did do that, and that's where we came up with Night Sweats. We branded it and came up with those two hosts who kind of walked you through the content.
Yeah, it's funny you also mentioned that, because you see well, they continued doing the hosts past the 90s, but it's very much a 90s kind of focused approach to that. I did want to throw out there, just a couple of weeks ago, YTV has stopped having on-air hosts. They've finally taken that element out of their station completely, and that's been end of an era for sure.
No kidding.
Yeah,
that's sad.
But yeah, it's a big part of what defined Night Sweats was just you guys were there on screen holding things together. Doing I don't want to say it's a Tim and Eric shtick, because I think it ultimately turned into something a lot different than that, but there's definitely that kind of influence behind it as well. And just the two of you getting your face out there, as well as the faces of Night Sweats. And so, I mean, that was critical to making the whole thing work. And you did I know that this started with a number of different shorts as it went on, and I think at a certain point, even after it had been passed on from Blue Ant to Teletoon to Adult Swim Canada, you were still producing the show. Like the show wasn't fully in the can yet.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
We had started kind of making yeah, no, it's funny as it transitioned from where it was going to land at the beginning of 2015 to where we ultimately landed. But it changed hands, and I think that's just because of the partnership between Blue Ant and Chorus, like where they wanted it to land. Also, just the changing landscape at that time. Everything was kind of all over the place. I think this was during the early days of Quibi, when everything was just like the Wild West. There was just like shorts all over the place, and yeah, I don't know. It's a fever dream if I try to look back.
Which were the segments that you did on Night Sweats? You, of course, there was World Doctors.
Mm-hmm.
I have a list, and I think it's incomplete.
Well, there were a couple that became series. So we did World Doctors and we did Tuck and Ranger. Those were probably the ones that were the biggest serials that we did. We did a short called Blood Alley, which was kind of fun. We did one called Extreme Business.
Yes, Extreme Business. That was I love that one. That one was funny.
Definitely got a soft spot in my heart for that one.
Was NPC in there by that time?
No, I think NPC was kind of its own beast.
Yeah. And is there a way to watch Night Sweats now? I think it's kind of gone. They stopped rerunning it after a certain point, and I don't know if it's even available digitally or anything.
I think if you throw on a VPN and pay for VRV, if it still exists.
Oh, Verve does not exist anymore.
Okay.
It's gone. I didn't know it was on Verve. That's interesting.
It was. I do know some people were watching it on their Nintendo DSs through some streaming service in the States. Yeah. So it exists in various formats, but we're not up to date with where it lives right now. We can ask Josh.
That's interesting. If I had known it was on Verve, I would have been like telling people to watch it, my friends in the States, and I didn't. It just was very under the radar, I guess.
There was also a network. Where did we do that? Like, Share, Die, Bart? Do you remember that? There was another series that Mondo did. It was called Like, Share, Die. We did a couple segments for that, and I think it played on the Fusion Network, which was another briefly lived entertainment network down there.
Mm-hmm. Of course, didn't show up on Adult Swim in the States, which I think would have been great. I think it could have worked there, but it's not. Doesn't always work out that simply as it should with the way the shows are produced and broadcast.
I know.
Not that kind of back and forth relationship all the time.
Not yet. Yeah. Just cross your fingers for us. Get us on the air down there. I
think from what I've seen of Psi Cops so far, I think it would. I think it is better than some of the Adult Swim originals I've seen lately, frankly. And I hope maybe it can happen, but again, it may not even be available to them with the way these things work sometimes. But on that note, so Night Sweats ended in 2016 at some point, and what happened? Like, what happened next? What kind of brought you from the end of Night Sweats to making Psi Cops a thing?
A dirty, anxiety-ridden landscape of overworking and hustling. It was it's interesting. That phase got 2000, maybe around 2017. A lot of the kind of like YouTube-y shorts had a bit dried up for us, but I think the bigger picture was we were ready to, like, our goal starting when we were in our like early 20s, honestly, was to get a full show on Adult Swim.
Mm-hmm.
And man, was it ever fun making that stuff for YouTube, like nonstop interfacing with our audience and being able to create something every 2 weeks, but it really doesn't pay the bills. And we really wanted to try our hand at longer form stuff. So we started kind of this quest to sell, to get a bigger TV show made. And there was a lot of ups and downs. It took 6 years from the day we pitched it for them to greenlight it, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's funny because we talk about 2016. I think 2016 is when we first cracked open the script for the initial pilot or demo of Psi Cops. And for us to try to sell a show, like, the best process to go through the pitching process is to have a animated demo. So, I mean, you watch our stuff, you get a taste for what it is, but if you hadn't watched it before, it's hard to describe that to people. So the best way to walk into a room and be like, here, buy our show, is to actually show them something. And we cut that early 2016, and then Yeah, it's kind of weird to think about that.
And we should note that, I mean, a couple important partnerships happened for us starting 3/4 of the way through World Doctors. So like 2015 in Vancouver, there's a company called Oddfellows. It's run by Chris Ferguson. It's a production company. They do mainly movies, but he's a dude who works in our building, the same building that our office was in. And we met him honestly because I started dating his best friend. And like, he eventually came to know and love World Doctors, and he suggested like, hey, I got contacts in LA and knows a lot of people, like maybe we should start a partnership and see if we could do some bigger stuff for you. Thank God we partnered with him, one of our very good friends now. And he got World Doctors in front of David Alpert, which is the producer of The Walking Dead at Skybound. And he loved it. And he said, I'd love to, this is en route to creating that demo that Chris was just talking about. He was like, I'd love to partner up and create something and see if we can go out and sell it together. And he said, like, I love your shtick. Like, how can we do something in the genre space? And we pitched him on a few ideas. One of them being, what about supernatural detectives as the next job? And he loved it. And he commissioned that demo out of us. And we've been kind of riding along with David Alpert and Skybound. They've been just such a huge part of it since. So partnering with them was huge, because it allowed us to go to Netflix, Amazon, Adult Swim, Chorus. It opened the door for us to go pitch to all these places.
Yeah. So it wasn't just directly back to Chorus and Adult Swim after after Night Sweats was done. There was still pitching around and different parties involved.
Oh yeah, it's I'd say for every success story that we have personally, there's probably about 20 kicks of the can at it. Pages and pages and pages of projects that we thought were going to fly, and that we love just as much, but just didn't have the sparkle or whatever it was to kind of get off the ground. And it's funny when you look back and you're like, okay, it could have been any one of those projects that ended up landing somewhere, but this one just had something special. I think it was just because it's it's basically just our two-man shtick again, elevated.
And I think Chris and I learned something pretty important about pitching comedy through that process. Is Chris and I, it doesn't seem like, but we're pretty high concept in our work. We start with a lot of like critical theory and talks of tone and vibe and all this stuff. And for a long time, we thought what sold something was walking in a room with just the craziest, wackiest, out of this world idea. And what we started to realize is like, these producers that are that have the money and are wanting to make stuff move, that they need something bite-sized, easy to wrap their head around. We keep saying, someone said to us something that they could be laying in their partner with in bed at night and be like, oh, I'm working on this thing, and say it in one sentence and people get it. And I think up until then, we're pitching pretty complex projects, but Psi Cops, like literally what we say every time, what we said earlier, it's X-Files replacing Mulder and Scully with two morons, and people always go, and then, okay, like it's a start. Like from there, you get to talk about comedy tone and all this, but like it was a huge lesson in simplicity honestly sells in this game.
Yep, that short elevator pitch, and then combine that with the 1-2 punch of having a demo that kind of shows off the rapid voice, or the rapid monotone performance that we do in this, and the quick cutting and the style basically, that really kind of helps sell it. So after our American detour, like heading down, and we had some success and some ups and downs trying to sell it in the States. We focused back on Canada, and we ended up partnering with Wind Sun Sky to help us pitch it out east. And so, Bart, when was that? Was it only a year later? Was that 2017?
Yeah.
So we went out, we pitched it to Chorus, we pitched it to CBC, which at the time, like, it was a lot more absurd than it sounds now, because they do some experimental stuff, but it just didn't feel right.
Not as much as I think they should. But.
Totally. And I mean, there's not a lot of people to pitch to. Who else was it? It was Bell. to Bell. Sarah Fowley at Bell. Sarah Fowley, we did The Woodsman with way back in like 2006. So we kind of felt maybe we have a little foot in the door here, but it all just kind of comes down to being in the right place at the right time. And
and at that time we weren't
perfect segue.
The right place.
No, it was the wrong place, but the right people. because we ended up at Chorus we pitched to Brandon Lane, who worked there at the time, and he ended up being a really big champion for us.
Yeah, he really loved the project, and we knew that once it was over there, they were pretty excited about it. And then for Chris and I, it was a couple more years of hard hustling, just whatever scraps of cartoons we could be making and grants we could be getting. And Chris and I come from an advertising background, so we were doing lots of, just editing ads and brainstorming on stuff for different clients and stuff.
Really exciting stuff for fun clients and friends in the advertising industry. Would never disparage them.
Yeah, and then I mean the the kind of the biggest dumbest moment of it all was when in 2019 or 20, I meant to send an email to a Brandon in LA. And when you're in that hustle, Chris and I just once every couple of months would send a new project we're working on to every single person and supplier and client we'd ever met. Because every time we did that, some business would come out of it somewhere. And a lot of these people, we had pretty friendly, casual relationships. And so like Brendan Lane, who works at Chorus, was the head of development.
You're doing it. You're doing it.
No, just said he was a dude. But we knew a dude in LA named Brandon Lane, right, Chris?
No, you're flipping your Brandons and Brandons. See, this is how it happened.
Doesn't matter. I meant to send a Brendan email, and I sent a Brandon an email that just said, "What the hell's up? Let's make some cartoons, dude." And I accidentally emailed the dude at Chorus, and I phoned Chris on the weekend. I'm like, did I send that to the wrong guy? Like, did I just send the head of development the most casual, stupid email about making cartoons? And he got back to us. Yeah, and I had sent it to the wrong person. And he got it back to us on Monday and was like, yeah, actually, we're about to kick off Adult Swim. Funny that you say that. And, your guys' project has been top of mind, but yeah, actually, we want to make some cartoons. So they've been thinking about what to make for their first cartoon, and we seriously tie it to this dumb email, that misfired email that prompted this whole thing to go off.
Well, I wish we could all be so lucky when we send email to the wrong person. So you've defined your whole shtick as a two-person show, but there's a number of other people involved with this, of course. And I just looking at the cast, you have a lot of you got some Night Sweats alumni back with you. Jeff Shorkey is in the show.
Definitely.
And Brian Drummond, Mr. Over 9000 himself. It makes an appearance as well. Who else can we expect to hear in the cast for this series? And how closely did you work with them, or how did that all come together?
Yeah, we had a lot of really great talent on the show. We have a lot of our subsequent characters. There's a lot of Vancouver comedy talent that are pretty well known, like Ryan Beal and Ronald Dario, and people out here that are well-known comedians. Brian, he plays a pretty big role, Stone Face Man, who's like a main cast member. There's a lot of episodes focused on him, and he's freaking amazing. And we got Brian to do a lot of extra voices in it too. It was so fun working with him. And then we kind of have some semi upcoming in the voice actor world for some of our mains, like Chris, Tiana, Tina, and Daisy.
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes to like what Bart and I really like to do is avoid. Brian's the exception to the rule because he's like Mr. Voice, right? He can do whatever you want. But we usually like to work with people who are I don't want to say raw or unfiltered, but it's more like just not typical on mic people. Like they're more on screen. Or like they're a little bit more, performance based, or a little bit, I guess raw around the edges. And like that's where Tina comes into it. Tiana is amazing, and Dejan. They all have kind of smaller roles in TV shows. I think Dejan played a doctor on one of the big CTV long running things, The Good Doctor or something like that, or Saving Hope, one of those. Tina does a lot of stuff. She's also a fitness model. And Tiana, who can sing fantastically, and they all have like this amazing range that is like so atypical from what you would expect in a cartoon, that just makes their performances so unique. And to your earlier point about like how close we worked with it, like I mean, if you look at the credits, it's kind of embarrassing because Bart and I do literally every role. Like we have a hand in everything on the show. And so we were directly directing everybody in the booth, like literally in the same room with them. It was during COVID. So we were lucky to have a big studio where we could be, the 20 feet required distance from their faces and still record them. But we're literally in the same space with them. So we can kind of bounce off of them and do some improv.
Yeah, and you do the writing and the voices, and you're still very hands-on with the animation part, as again you very clearly demonstrated when you look at the credits. Can you talk a little more about the animation process and just how you define it, just the look and the style and the approach and what tools you use?
We're kind of, it's not the easiest one to define. I think most people, as soon as you see it, you go, oh yeah, this doesn't look like other current cartoons. And part of it is that we really went for a naturalistic feel. Like we're going for semi-realistic looking people. We use 3D models to create 2D puppets. And those 2D puppets kind of live in a touch of that uncanny valley zone where they're really based on quite close to human proportions and figures. And then the fun of the show is 90% of it is animated in 2D, but because these are 3D characters, we can break out and have them do 3D action. So a lot of the action scenes, suddenly these guys can have full 360-degree, jump kicks and legs and arms flailing all over the place. So it's a real kind of fun visual treat for the brain.
And then we kind of treat it all with this post treatment that's kind of loosely comic booky, outliney, that kind of ties it all together. So like you don't really see the seams between the 2D and the 3D very clearly. So they sneak up on you, and it's really fun. It's a great chance for us to play with our shitty 3D aesthetic that we've always loved, but it's not so like visually offensive anymore. Like it's a little bit more accessible to an audience that might not quite jive with ugliness on purpose. That was kind of a hallmark of our earlier stuff.
Here's another thing I noticed. Now I know the show is about anime. I don't know if you guys ever watched anime or have any influence from it. We could talk about that in a bit if you want. But one thing that's sort of similar that I know is a big influence on your work is video games. Obviously, we look at World Doctors, and there's a lot of influence from stuff like Gary's Mod going into your approach, that whole kind of thing. And I don't know if this was the intention, but when I look at Psi Cops, it makes me think of like PlayStation 1 era games, like the backgrounds, the way things are depicted in the color palette. It makes me think of like this is the same kind of space that stuff like Parasite Eve or Resident Evil or Silent Hill exists in, like you mentioned with the 3D modeling over sort of the 2D environments that you'd find in there. I don't know if that's exactly what you had in mind. That's just kind of the impression I got. But do video games kind of factor into your aesthetic approach?
Well, we're both definitely big video game nerds. We're trying to play less as we get older. But, yeah, 100%. That kind of the origin of where World Doctors came from is just basically anything digital that was part of a culture. And it's really fun to hear the PlayStation 1. We haven't heard that before, but you're absolutely right, like Resident Evil, this kind of dark, grimy, digital aesthetic. Like it's definitely a subconscious influence. It wasn't fully intentional, but for sure, specifically your references, but absolutely as a whole, video games, 100%.
Yeah, because I've been playing like the Resident Evil 2 remake, which, is great, far funner to play than the old ones, but I'm also looking at videos of the original game and just seeing that really distinct aesthetic and like the cutting corners they had to do to kind of make that's environment and impression work in it. And it's like, I don't want to deal with tank controls or any bullshit like that, but there's just something real cozy and admirable about just the look of those old games. That again, specifically that late 90s PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn kind of era where all 100%. All these 100%. Compromises have to be made to get this look down, and it just
you get this tight little visual box to play in, and you kind of have to, you have a toolbox for how you can make something look, again, big air quotes, sexy within your limited kind of palette and toolbox. And that is a huge, it's an inspiration in and of itself, because you kind of need to try to one up what you can do with your limited assets.
So the show Psi Cops, it's 11 minutes, super dense. You have this rapid fire nonstop Fox Kids kind of dialogue going all the time. And somehow you have the room to fit in something really amazing in this show, an opening credit sequence. Anything to say about that?
Oh man, if we could have a whole podcast on this in and of itself. It was a journey to get to it. It was a journey to get to it. But I think, like going back to everything Bart and have always done together, it's always had a theme song, and that's always been kind of like, like you gotta have like a little mnemonic to tie it all together. Like the Woodsman obviously was just a little guitar lick and then somebody screaming the Woodsman, hey. But like just that is enough, and we're like, we want to keep it short, we want to do something that lives in that kind of world. World Doctors had the same thing, like a 15-second theme song, right? And we were like, what's quintessentially supernatural, Canadian, overwrought, not necessarily a false tone, but like sarcastic. And we're like, is Nickelback? Is that where we're gonna go? Are we gonna go Nickelback? I mean, it was an influence.
It was funny enough, it was a kind of a long journey to find that. It was probably one of the biggest, most of the stuff that, because Chris and I have worked on it and been thinking about the show so long, most of it came real quick. Our rules on character design, our rules on tone, color palette, sound effects, music, like in show music. But the theme song, we were just like, there was unlimited spaces we could go. By the way, we love the theme song. So like
it's great.
It's like a point of passion for us. And yeah, we were kind of like, we wanted to hear like a bad poem, a real hard rocky Nickelbackian, like a bit of a misdirect, to Chris's point. It doesn't fully feel like a normal supernatural show would do it, but it fits right in. But the biggest challenge was obviously writing the music. We have an amazing composer named Virginia. What's Virginia's last name, Chris?
Kilbertus. Virginia Kilbertus. She did Kilbertus. She did all the music for the show, all the stuff that wasn't cheesy. Needle drop stuff. We definitely play with our cheesy stock. It's if
you hear anything cool in the show, it's Virginia. But definitely. Yeah, we worked with her and we're like, we really want to do some Nickelback, and we wrote those lyrics. We're like, what are the dumbest, like just the dumbest supernatural lyrics possible? Like what are some of the lines? Like I must
aliens from my past haunted me like ghosts. Might as well be a vampire because it's just me in the mirror. I'm all alone fighting the skeletons in my closet with my friend.
Right. It's just like a bunch of contradictory supernatural mashup. We sent her the lyrics, and now we're like, we want Nickelback. And then she found this dude, Johnny from, what's this band called? The Art of War?
The Art of Dying. The Art of Dying. They're a Vancouver band. They've got some hits on Spotify. They're awesome, and they're it. Like you listen to it, and they're like, okay, that's the vibe.
Yeah. It was so funny because it was just piece by piece. She was finding guitars that sounded right. We found these lyrics. Anyways, that's a long story to say. It was a journey to get there, and Johnny pulled it all together. He's got that screaming Nickelback voice. He really brought the lyrics in. We're just like, we love that dumb theme song so much. And it's really catchy. I warn you, don't listen to it more than a couple times. It'll be in your brain forever.
So overall, this is a very Vancouver show, not just in terms of production, but you're building off of X-Files, Nickelback, all this other stuff. Anything else that you feel defines it as a Vancouver show?
Oh, hugely. We like to joke that, because Vancouver never gets to play Vancouver, but like in Psi Cops, it takes place in Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
It literally
I was going to ask.
It
wasn't quite clear in the first two episodes, but yeah, it is.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's in Vancouver. They head out to Chilliwack once or twice. They do make a couple excursions out to Alberta, the road trip episodes, but it's all very Vancouver based, and we're very stoked about that.
Yeah, a big point of passion for Chris and I is there's like a lot of hidden comedy gold in the West Coast. Toronto, they get to have all the fun with the East gets to have all the fun with the comedy and the shows and everything. It's very rare that original content gets created in Vancouver. So once this started to look like it was getting picked up, we kind of made a conscious decision to celebrate as much of Vancouver as we could in there. Like our driving plates in the background are literally our 3D manager or project manager driving around in his car recording Vancouver itself. Like we're quite passionate. And then, as we said, we bring as many Vancouver medians as the union would let us, and we really pushed to make sure it's not like you don't watch it and just like it's not hitting you over the head, but by the end of the season you're going to be like, yeah, this is Vancouver. Like we even detailed on a map where we picture their headquarters.
Yeah, you can see that map in the background. That's right. Now that you mentioned it, I remember that now. So yeah, I mean, I spent all the last week at a convention over in Toronto, Anime North, just like trying to convince people, like, come on, guys, Vancouver's where it's at. Vancouver's it's the future, not this place. And I'm glad to hear you guys are kind of backing me up on that.
We're hugely. Yeah. And like Vancouver is a huge service city. Like there's a huge animation industry here, but it's all like American shows, or it's shows that are show run from out of town, and it was very cool to do it here. Our design team was all at Winsun Sky. We split it a little bit, but want to talk just a little bit about our partners on this. Like we had our in-house team at Winsun Sky. It was maybe 15 to 25 people, I think we had working with us there. And then we partnered with Smiley Guy Studios, who have done, they've been in Canadian animation for a long time. Recently, they did Corner Gas, the animated series, but we first heard of them with Odd Job Jack back on the Comedy Network. So they've been around for a while, and they've been doing adult comedy specifically. They kind of really picked up our vibe. So they were awesome to work with, but they were out east. So like when we were trying to describe like Vancouver neighborhoods, they just couldn't get it right. It was a real challenge.
So there's 26 episodes for this show.
24
episodes. So are we getting one a week? Is that what the schedule's going to be looking like? Or are we doing two a week?
We're going to be doing two a week, 2 a week back to back. And then I think as soon as they air Sunday night, they'll be up to stream on Stack.
Yeah. So if you don't have a cable subscription, you can get it on Stack. If you do have access to cable, you can watch it live. And I haven't heard a direct confirmation of this, but typically it should be on the global app as well, which you can log into with a cable subscription if you have access to one of those. And you can watch stuff streaming there. It's got ads, but it's still streaming. And what over the journey of these 24 episodes, without spoiling too much, what can we look forward to?
Oh, Bart, you had a great short list, didn't you?
Well, short list of
the wacky things we can look forward to.
I would say, first of all, you get to look forward to like a lot of fun with the main characters, disrupting every possible supernatural thing you've ever held dear to your heart. So like there is conspiracies, there's aliens, there's crop circles, there's multiple different types of ghosts, there's a house that makes people murder each other, there's serial killers, it's all of that stuff in one place. And every episode kind of focuses on a different angle of one of those. And kind of a fun spin on, we got stuff like Rick and Morty out there, which like really plays with the comedy.
Animated in Vancouver.
Animated in Vancouver, that really plays with the fun of the sci-fi. And where we kind of switched it up with ours is the supernatural in our show isn't comedy, in the sense that like it's never like the ghost of a toaster. Kid and Felix, the main guys, make the supernatural funny and weird. Like they're always on kind of a normal supernatural case, but because of their own insanity and weird ways of looking at things, they muddle and disrupt every possible one of these, the classic setups.
It seems, is it all episodic, or can we expect any kind of overarching story running through things, or just character development? I mean, I'm not saying it has to be one way or another.
No, not at all. But again, I think this goes to like the X-Files roots. I'd say like 90% of the show was purely Monster of the Week, episodic. We've got a couple little threads that you'll pick up on. So that was kind of important how we laid out. And obviously there's a season finale that kind of caps things off in a fun way. But it's peppered throughout. So it's primarily episodic, but there is a little bit of growth. Characters do go on little tiny idiotic journeys, and things do happen. So yeah, you might want to watch it in the order we show it to you, but it wouldn't kill you if you didn't.
No, not at all. On the last two episodes, you could kind of jump in if you wanted.
Arguably, the Monster of the Week episodes of X-Files are the best ones anyway. So.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. Before we wrap up, anything else that you guys wanted to add about about Psi Cops or night sweats or life?
I think we got a lot of it out. This has kind of definitely been our most comprehensive chat about Psi Cops. It's really some great questions. It's really fun to be able to talk to you, Jesse.
Yeah, really fun to do the deep dive kind of under the hood and get into some of the details that that people might really want to dig into. So I appreciate you asking all these questions.
Yeah.
No problem. It's great having you on. So yeah, Bart, Chris, thanks for coming on. I don't know if you're doing that much on social media these days, but where can folks find you online or find your stuff online or find more of your stuff in general?
We just literally today put a spit shine on Oddfellows Labs, all one word, on Instagram. So you can kind of see a link, and there's links to like all of our kind of greatest hits there.
And then Psi Cops, which is our kind of main force right now. I think it's Psi Cops official or official Psi Cops. We got
we should know that.
Yeah, page. We're posting lots of clips and spoilers and ruin the whole show for everyone on there.
Okay. And Night Sweats is, I don't know, it's somewhere.
I'm gonna ask. Now that you bring it up, I'm curious to send a message to Chorus and say, where is it?
Yeah, it's gotta be somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll find it. We'll track it down.
Thanks, guys. Psi Cops, it premieres June 4th at 11 p.m. on Adult Swim Canada, or is it 10? I can't remember.
As far as I know, yeah, it'll be after Eric Andre. So
right.
Yeah, that's I go to the Adult Swim Canada website. It doesn't say.
Good to know. I'll bring that up too.
Hold on, they got a schedule. Let me just pull that up. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The schedule does not currently show when it's going to be running because it only goes to Sunday, June 4th.
Shit. Maybe we've been canceled. Maybe we've been canceled and we don't even know. We'll find
anyway,
out.
All right. I think it's sometime that night. If you miss it, you can see it streaming. I will put the actual time in the in the show notes. Guys, thanks for coming on, and thanks for tuning into Zannen Canada. You can reach me on Twitter at jbetteridge, just in case you're still on the Hell site, or email zannencanada@gmail.com. Our theme song is by Ultraclystron and can be found on his album Packet Flood, and you can find that at ultraclystron.com. Please subscribe to my show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever you use for that stuff, and see you again.